Hello, True Blood fans. This is Shanea O'Connor from TrueBloodFansource.com. In my weekly discussion of this week's episode, in this case, it is Whatever I Am You Made Me, which is episode 503. The episode started out with Tara running away from Sookie and Lafayette, and we got to see what the world looks like from a brand new vampire's eyes, which was kind of cool. I liked the effect of her looking up into the sky and seeing all of the stars. But I felt sorry for her. I mean, I felt sorry for her since, last season when, she got burned on the door handle, and then she got shot in the head. I mean, I was like, I felt like she was like Kenny from South Park. If you've ever watched that show, he always gets killed, and then he always comes back. But yeah, I felt like she was a little bit like Kenny last season, and now she's a vampire, and I feel bad for her because she obviously needs a vampire, and I sort of find it amusing that Lafayette and Tara so far have felt like they can help her or like they can be responsible for her, because they can't. They can't understand anything that Tara is feeling or any of the changes she's going through. Only a vampire can understand. I mean, the only vampire Lafayette and Sookie know are like Bill, Eric, and they know Jessica and Pam. But Jessica, she's the youngest vampire, but they all met her after she was turned. And even though Bill wasn't the best maker at the beginning, he was still making sure that she knew the basics and that she was being taken care of, even when he brought her to Pam and Eric in season 1. But Tara has nobody. In the absence of Pam, I mean, she should at least have Jessica, or go to Jessica or something, or go to somebody, or go to Pam herself. How about that? I mean, that was one of the things that occurred to me when I watched Sookie basically blast Pam across the room. I felt it was unnecessary for Sookie to go into Fantasia and demand that Pam basically, I mean, she didn't demand, she said please, but I felt like she sort of demanded of Pam, call Tara, and Pam's like, no. And I think that, Tara could have gone to Pam, but, she, being the young vampire that she is, she doesn't know what to do. I mean, no one's told her anything. I mean, the poor thing goes to Sam, and she's like, I'm hungry, and she's drinking all these bottles of True Blood, and then she falls asleep at the table. She knows nothing. And, I can't be mad at Pam because, Pam didn't want to do this at all. And, she was not prepared to do it. I mean, she was really, if things weren't going on the way they were with Eric, and that things were not resolved, I think that she would have probably, been a little bit kinder to Tara and been like, okay, come on, I'll take you. But hopefully now we'll see that. But speaking of Pam, I mean, Tara's turning sort of reflects Pam in a way, because as we saw, Eric quite reluctantly turned Pam. I mean, he really had no choice. But before I get to that, I want to say that I did like seeing how Bill, Eric, Pam, and Lorena all met each other. I thought it was great that the writers decided that Bill and Lorena would be the vampires who have been killing the prostitutes. That was a nice little touch, and it was nice to see Mariana Claveno back for a stint as Lorena. but it was interesting how, she obviously knows the vampire hierarchy, and she respects that Eric's older, and it was kind of funny to see Bill like wanting to stake Eric, and Eric's like, "Oh no, little boy, no, no," and saying to Lorena, "You better teach your progeny respect." And I love how, even as a human, Pam is all like, "That'll be $500 for every prostitute that you drained." So when she said that, when I was rewatching it the second time, I realized that she probably is the one who is the brains behind all of their business ventures that they've had over the centuries. Eric's probably financed it, but she's probably in charge of everything. So I thought that was good, and we actually see evidence of that. Sorry, that's the fax machine. In the end of the episode, because she's working on the books or something, obviously. So I thought that was good. But speaking of Pam, I was surprised that she was turned in the way that she was. I knew when she made that great speech, which I thought was a very truthful moment. When she's being really honest with him about what life is like for a woman who is a prostitute after she leaves the business. I thought that was a great speech. And Eric, he wants to be very honorable, but I also think that he, being a man, kind of didn't really understand. Because, even though he's been a vampire for a long time, and he doesn't necessarily want to do that, to anyone just to do it, I felt like he really didn't hear what Pam was trying to say. I think that for Pam, it's much more awful, especially in the time that she was living in. If she was in another time, there might have been more opportunities for women, but, in 1905, women still couldn't vote. Men still had a lot of power legally that women couldn't have. So she didn't have a lot of options, and for her to recognize that this might be the only way out, because that's the thing too, that I thought about Pam. As much as she probably didn't want to go the traditional route of getting married and becoming a mother and doing that whole thing, I think that, getting into the business and being kicked out of her family, and seeing Eric as a vampire kind of made her realize that, she doesn't have that many options. She's making money now, but like she says, like, what's going to happen to me after? And see, Eric has options. Even as a human, he had options. He was fighting, but as a man, he had more opportunities than Pam would ever have until very recently. So I thought it was great that he was trying to be honorable, but I was also very surprised that Pam forced his hand by slicing her wrists. That shocked me. I thought that Pam being who she was, that she would obviously go after him, but I thought it would be in a different way. And I guess it makes sense given what we know about how she got into prostitution and all of this stuff. But I thought that her character, it would happen for her in another way. But it worked. It worked, and Kristen and Alex did a great job. I loved how, he was obviously Eric was obviously very taken from the very beginning with Pam. That she is what he wanted. And now, like Alexander Skarsgård said in his commentary on HBO Go, now he's sort of stuck with her. And I think that arrangement, even though he reluctantly turned her, it was either she dies or he turns her. Even though he was forced, I think that arrangement has worked out very, very well for him. But I think now, given that we know how Pam was turned, we can kind of see how Eric getting angry at her now has kind of, it kind of ties together that sort of anger, because one could argue, and I think that this could be so, that he has a little bit of resentment for being stuck with her, and now, given that she tried to kill Sookie last season, that resentment has kind of bubbled to the surface a little bit. We're going to see them reunite, and it's not going to be good for a while, but it'll be interesting to see how they resolve, because I know I've seen them hug, so I know that things get better, but obviously things are going to get a little bit worse before we see them get better. So that took up a good chunk of the storyline for the episode. And Eric in the present day was with Bill, and they obviously got off for being killed, though they're wearing an eye stake. It was great to see Tina Margarino, who was on Big Love, and Veronica Mars playing the tech person, and I loved how she had them take their shirts off, and then she's like putting the things on and saying, "You two are too good to be goo." I thought that was great. But I didn't really get why there was this scene where Salome seduced both Bill and Eric. I get that that's her character, and they kind of had to fill in a little bit so that we learn a little bit more about her, but I think that it was sort of a waste of 2 sex scenes to have her do that. Because, she could have, I thought the scenes could have been done a little bit better than have her do that. I mean, it made more sense for me to see her with Roman at the end, rather than to have sex with both Eric and with Bill, because even though that's her character, I mean, that made her look to me more like a whore than, this kind of strong woman who's survived like centuries. So I thought it kind of undermined her character. But Bill and Eric have obviously survived. And Roman has employed Steve Newland to be the new Nan Flanagan and kind of try to figure out a way to clean up this Russell Edgington mess. And I think that's good. That cements Michael McMillan's place for a while, especially if the show's renewed. But the other interesting thing that we learned about this week is Jason. A lot of people said that, it was sort of a boring storyline to have Jason have slept with a teacher and for him to sort of have been traumatized by it. But given Jason's behavior, there's not very many options you could have for that. To explain, his behavior. And I thought that was very well played by Ryan Quanten. I loved how up until the very act, he was very much into sleeping with his teacher, but I liked the fact that he is growing as a character and finally realizing that, oh my God, I think that experience might have affected me more than I realized, and that I can't keep having sex with girls. I mean, he started to do that in the premiere episode and last episode, but I thought that it was good that he sort of started to recognize that behavior in himself. And kudos to Jessica for being a strong girl and saying, hey, you know what, we're gonna talk about this. I'm gonna put on some sweats and you're gonna tell me all about what happened, and being a good friend. And I appreciated that with them, especially because I think Jessica and Jason need that in each other. They need a friend more than they do another romance at this point. So that was good. And I liked that Jessica discovered her first fairy. She doesn't even really know what it is because, there's nobody around. The other good storyline that happened this week was, of course, Alcide finding out about Debbie. I'm really glad that they actually decided to have him find out now rather than to drag it out anymore, because that really puts him in a bind, because obviously the parents are looking for Debbie and everything. So, he's going to have to make some choices, and it puts him and Sookie in a really kind of awkward dynamic. And I'm really looking forward to how that sort of plays out. And on a side note, I loved how Andy's butt got put on Facebook and how that bonded Holly and him. I mean, I loved how they were kind of comparing notes on how sort of quote pathetic they are, and I like that storyline. It's a nice little storyline for them to see, for them to have, and it's good to see Andy and Holly together, and to have sort of a normal storyline grounding it, because everything else is supernatural. Lafayette's also facing the demon. It's obvious that he has inherited some of the demon power from Jesus into himself, because he tries to pour bleach into the gumbo when Arlene chastises him for turning Tara into a vampire. So there's lots of different storylines that I'm really anxious to see how they pay off. For me, as I'm sure for many of you, it's hard to kind of watch the show sometimes because there's so many things that are going on that you want to see pay off, but some of the storylines are going so slowly because there are so many things that, you want to see things happen faster. Obviously, we know Tara won't commit vampiricide because Pam felt her hurting herself. So obviously we're going to see Pam finally face her responsibility. So that was the end of the episode. Sorry if it's a little bit schizo, but I really like this episode. I look forward to hearing your comments about the articles I posted this week. If you want to know more about what's going to happen in next week's episode, we'll meet again. Be sure to check our site, www.truebloodfansource.com, because I posted spoilers courtesy of E! Online about the general arc of next week. There's more spoilers to come. I should be posting more tonight, I hope. And as always, thank you for watching the podcast. Thank you if you're somebody who watches the live tweets when I tweet the East Coast feed every Sunday. So thank you for sticking with us, and I hope you'll come back for next week's discussion. See you later.